Here's the great Derek Scott. He joins me in enjoying these last about 5 to 6 hours before our brackets are in the trash can. Right, Derek?
Well, that's usually how it goes. Although I will say, I am on a streak in my small group that I play with. I won 2 years ago, and I was the runner-up last year. And the only reason I lost last year is for some reason, I let pride get in my way and did not pick. I had UConn and Purdue in the finals, but I picked Purdue to win it, knowing full well they couldn't or wouldn't. But I just didn't want to just pick the same team a second year in a row. Kind of felt like that, almost felt like cheating. Well, common sense, it was the right answer. But so anyway, based on that recent success, I am convinced it will be a complete and utter failure this year. So
It's generally like a girl I dated in college. She's like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "Oh, well, they're I'll tell her whatever team it was. Oh, I like their mascot. I'll take that one." And then it's not vilifying women or anything. I'm just talking about this particular one. And then she won the bracket. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Oh, well, who's the best team in the tournament? Well, that team. Okay, well, they're going to win it, and they did. Like, oh, well, that's kind of simple. I never really thought about it like that. Well, you saw every team in the SEC, Derek. How many get to the Sweet 16?
Oh man, it's so hard to tell because it has nothing to do oftentimes with the regular season. I mean, that's the hard part. Is this sport is so unique and it's magical. There's nothing I would trade for the NCAA tournament experience. I wouldn't adjust it in one small measure, wouldn't touch it. But it's not the same as saying in football necessarily, the team that wins it all likely was the best team. Right. It's not that. It's, who gets hot. And because you've got to win 6 in a row, and there are too many years that you can look back and think about. If you really go back and look, who was the best team in the regular season? They don't usually win it. I mean, the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA basketball tournament hasn't won this thing in how long? I mean, it has been a while, Yeah. I guess UConn last year, I can't remember now if they ended up being the number 1 overall seed or not, but just doesn't usually go that way. So It's not necessarily about, was this league historically great this year? Yes. Does that guarantee postseason success? Not in the least. I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't go at all the way people expect it. But the other side of that is I've seen people that really love their KenPom numbers and their analytics who are saying that the number 1 seeds, their efficiency marks were so far above everything that is normal that they are leaning hard into the possibility that Final Four might be the 4-1 seeds. I'm not going there just because history has shown you rarely how often 1 seeds have that level of success. So I did not do that with my bracket, but I understand why you might, just based on how elite those 4 teams really were at the when the season concluded, and really throughout the course of the season. If you wanted to tell me Auburn, Florida, Duke and Houston were all going to be there, I won't be shocked, but I'm not going to put my shillings on such a outcome. So.
No, well, the flag, I know that he's going to play. I mean, I get that, but obviously still being hurt last week gives you a little pause. Auburn's lost 3 of 4 coming into this thing. I don't know how much that means.
I think it means a lot. I don't think you just find it again this time of year. Maybe they do, but the things that I go against Auburn are the fact that they're not playing their best right now. Secondly, that they got what I call the Duke 2017 treatment. You remember Duke was a 2 seed and got sent to Greenville, South Carolina, which seems relatively close to Durham. But then you realize if that team wins their first game, you've got to play South Carolina in South Carolina. And oh, by the way, North Carolina is going to be there too, and their fans hate us. So it became a very one-sided building in the second round. Well, Auburn could face Louisville in Rupp Arena in the second round, and Tennessee's fans could be there too. It could really turn on Auburn in that same manner in the second round. So I just think there's a lot of stuff going against Auburn. So I'm not as good as they were this year. Tip my cap. Best team in college basketball if you want to judge it from beginning to end, no question. But I can't ride with that. And Duke plays in such a bad ACC this year. I mean, if you get to the second round with them and they get Mississippi State, when's the last time they matched up with a team that looked like Mississippi State? And yet Mississippi State has matched up with teams that look similar to Duke pretty much at least once a week for the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. So I don't love – for it to be early round matchups, I don't think either one of them have the greatest situation in that regard as a setup. And the only thing I have against Florida is that everybody is picking Florida.
Right.
I mean, everybody is picking Florida, and that doesn't often turn out to be the way it goes either. So we'll see. And then somebody once told me there's a longstanding trend where every team who's won it all had a first-round draft pick on their roster. You had at least one. And Florida, I don't know that Florida does. They're a great team, tremendous team, but I don't know who the first-round pick is on that roster. So,
well, that's a good point. Mike was talking about that on our program the other day. He said, go look at Florida's roster and see how they constructed it. It's not a bunch of blue chip guys.
Right.
That's just not what it is.
Right.
But they are good, and they are. You can argue the hottest.
And you could say the same thing about Auburn for that matter. They don't have a surefire first rounder on that roster at all. So, but they have both had amazing seasons, just tremendous seasons, and they also have the one thing in common that is that they absolutely should have lost at Colonial Life Arena. That's the crazy part.
There's a few teams that should, including Florida.
Those two are. I mean, the Florida loss was the worst. I mean, you led them for all but 4 seconds. I think the last basket of the game was their only lead, and Auburn, South Carolina outplayed pretty thoroughly while Janai Broome was on the floor. And when he was injured, it seemed like that flipped things in their favor as opposed to against them. So it's a crazy game and a 3-point loss there too. So.
On that note, with the Gamecocks, and Derek, you know damn well I won't pin you in a corner to pick apart players and who's good and bad and stuff like that. I'm not doing that. But just out of curiosity, what do you think the next few weeks looks like for this basketball program?
There will be there'll be great energy put into the portal, but I think there would have been regardless. I think that's now every year. That's the routine now. But yes, I mean, you can't look at the roster as it's constructed and see the outcome of the season and not think that you need to improve the roster. You've got to go find some new pieces. You can't just sit here and wait on Eli Ellis to come in and save the day. Right. You've got to go find some veterans. That's how the game is played these days. So I'm quite confident that Coach Paris and his staff will be working very, very hard to get guys in for visits and see if they can find some good matchups, good pairings, guys that are fits for this program as they were able to do so successfully 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, obviously you're losing some guards. Jamari's out of eligibility. Jacoby's gone. The Eli Ellis thing is an interesting talking point because he is a superstar where he's playing now. This is also the best league in the country. And I'm not saying he can't come in and be a superstar. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I agree 100% with what you're saying. Let's not put that on him. Let's let him grow into that role and get somebody else to take the reins there. My understanding is both Miles Studi and Nick Pringle, if they want to come back and are eligible to come back, which who knows with the NCAA. Well, if you want to be eligible, just sue the NCAA. They'll let you play. That they would like to return to South Carolina and that South Carolina would welcome them back to Columbia. I haven't heard a thing about Studi in the blood clot. That's a serious deal. So first and foremost, golly, I hope he's okay.
Oh, he's making great progress. They would have never let him get on the airplane with us in the last few road trips if he were not. I don't think that's the issue. It's just that's a 3-month window where they shut you down. So he's not been allowed to return to any serious activity. And the whole thing there is it's a bit of a Hail Mary trying to get that extra year back. But as you pointed out, we've seen some Hail Marys landed in NCAA challenges in recent years. So he's pursuing it. The university's pursuing it for him. So all you can do is sit and wait on that one. And as far as Nick has that extra year of eligibility because of COVID. The fit, if he's going to come back, the fit has to be in multi-parts. A, do you want to be here again? B, do they want you here again? And then C, if both sides agree that they'd like to keep that marriage intact, what are the NIL/financial terms of the marriage? Because there's no mandate that it has to look the same this year as it did last year. So if the university or if the basketball program feels like we've got to move the dollars around, we've got what we've got to work with, we've got to target some different things, does that change his mind, or does that make him want to go out and see what else is available out there? It's still weird talking about it in those terms, but that's the business aspect of what it is now. So you do have to take that into consideration, as opposed to just saying, hey, do you want to play here again? And do we want you to play here again? It now also comes down to, will the terms be different this year than last year that are offered to him? And if they are different, does that change his opinion of the opportunity?
Back in November, we were talking about Nick with you, and you mentioned his role at South Carolina versus his role at Alabama. Now that the dust is settled on the season and it's over, what do you think those challenges were like for him?
Well, it was hard. I mean, he's never played in a role where he was, trying to catch it on the block with his back to the basket and score over guys. That was new to him. And at times he looked good doing it. And then there were games where he really struggled with that. And I mean, it was just like it was for everybody on that roster this year. There were some ups and downs, and there were some games where you thought, we'll see if we can get that from him. Boy, that puts us in a different place. You saw that against Clemson, obviously. You saw it late in the season in the win against Arkansas. There were some spots there, but then there were some teams that were just so big and athletic and physical that it was hard for him to be able, in the half court, to make his mark, to find his niche and be impactful.
We'll see. Guys like Cam Scott and others, I mean, they got talent on this team, and we'll see what happens here over the next. We'll know. You got this April 7th NIL deal date coming up, and you got the portal opening, and you got all kinds of stuff going on. So we're going to know plenty about it here before long. You mentioned big and physical. That's also Arkansas Razorback baseball right now. Their offense is scorching. 342 on the season. They've hit 29, or no. They haven't hit 29. They've hit 9. I know they've hit 9 in 3 games, balls out of the yard.
Right.
They've hit 45, I think it is, 47 total on the year. 322. I said 342. This is a big opportunity for Gamecock baseball. I know some people look at it like it's scary. It can be. They're number 3 in the country, and Baum is one of the elite atmospheres in college baseball. But also, after what happened this past Sunday, squeaking through Tuesday night at Segra Park, you've got a huge opportunity to make a statement this weekend on the road against a top 3 or 4 team in the country. Derek, I mentioned their offense. The last few years, Arkansas's offense hasn't really been the story. It's been the pitching and the defense. And now they got these Aloy brothers who've popped up out of nowhere, and they've hit almost 20 balls out of the yard already through 20 games. This is going to be a tough contest. Do you expect? I guess what we're going to know today. You expect the rotation to stay the same as it was last week?
I tried to pull that out of Coach Maneri last night on Carolina Call, but he, to his defense, he was very honest. He said, "Hey, my plane just landed." He had been in Baton Rouge for Skip Bertman's wife's funeral. He and Coach Tanner went down for that. So the plane landed. He came to Backstreets to do the show, and he was going to the office when the show was over. And he and Terry Rooney were going to meet and discuss those very things. So he was not willing to commit at that point last night in the 6 o'clock hour as to whether the rotation would look the same or not. So and the fact that he wasn't willing to commit made me go, that's interesting, because I didn't see anything last weekend that made me think, well, you got to change this. This has to be addressed. I would feel like that's the best route to go, is to stick with those 3 in that order. But he and Coach Rooney know best. And so I'm curious to see when the release comes out today, if it does stay in place with that combo Stone, McCoy, Eskew. And if not, then what's the new direction you're going in? But, I thought both Stone and McCoy really battled their tails off last weekend. And that was their exposure to SEC starting pitching for the first time. And having done that, now you get your next exposure, which is a very adverse circumstance, meaning you're on the road in this league against a top 5 team and in front of what is usually a very, very intense atmosphere. I mean, that's the thing about Arkansas's fan base. They bring it, man. They're there every night for the most part. And so it'll be a real challenge for all those guys. But I don't know that you've got someone else sitting, waiting in the wings that you can say, well, they've been there before, so let's give them that shot. That's why I suspect it'll look similar, but we'll know probably within the next couple hours if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, I think so. There were 2 innings last week that were what you would call bad innings, crooked innings. Stone had one, McCoy had one, and they both worked through them, settled down, and gave their team a chance to win the game. Obviously, they did on Saturday, and didn't work out Friday, and then Sunday. I was a little concerned after Sunday with that loss, not for the outlook in the entire season, just. You didn't get North Carolina A&T or I don't know, somebody like that. You had the College of Charleston on Tuesday. And, and Chad does have a good baseball team. And I thought that could sneak up and get them. And they got out of there. There's no doubt about it. But you wonder when, especially teams, Derek, that are, fairly new together. I mean, I know they've been together since the fall. I get that. I understand it. But when you get into the season and you get your heart broken like that, collectively, who's the one that kind of grabs the bull by the horns and picks that group up and moves on. So I didn't know what we get out of them. And now they've had enough time to flush it, and at least they got the win. Offensively, though, last weekend, you saw, firsthand the Oklahoma pitching staff. I think they're very talented, including obviously the Witherspoon brothers.
Yeah,
I think it's a really good group. I thought that this team was ready for SEC pitching based on watching them last weekend. Regardless of what happened on Tuesday, Derek, I thought they were excited to see some arms that were going to challenge them.
I was very encouraged by the offense. I mean, would you have liked to have a little more pop, a little more extra base hitting? Sure. But as far as the comparison to how they looked against Clemson a couple of weeks back and how they looked against Oklahoma, there were major strides that were made up and down that lineup, and especially the bottom of the order, which at times had just not really held up its end of the bargain early in this season, even against some of the non-conference opponents that you weren't necessarily, overwhelmed by the talent on the pitching staff. But those guys really, really made their presence known throughout the weekend. Obviously, Henry Kazmar had his best 3-game stretch of the season. And then you look at, some of the other guys. I mean, I just felt really good about, Talmadge LeCroy, the way he swung the bat all weekend long, and Jordan Carrion is continuing to be a consistent, presence in this lineup. So yeah, that there was some real progress made there. And then the 2 freshmen who played a lot during the weekend, didn't look overwhelmed, because that was the one thing I took away from the Clemson weekend was KJ Scobie. As much as I like that kid and I'm excited about him, he looked like he was a freshman going up against big-time pitching for the first time when they played Clemson. And yet against Oklahoma, you didn't see that. He had, obviously Friday night was really loud for him, and then he comes back Saturday and hits the home run. And I just really liked what I saw from him. And Bo Hollins, he didn't look over his skis. He might not have had a ton of success as far as, results that weekend, but he didn't look like a guy who was overmatched. So that's a positive too. No, I felt good about the offense. The offense to me was productive. You want to squeeze out a few more runs here and there, but at the same time, it was not some disappointing performance from the guys at in the batter's box throughout that 3-game stretch.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think you're dead on with that, and not going strictly by the numbers here. I'm going by eyeball. I've watched Arkansas a decent amount this year. I try to watch all these SEC teams as much as possible, Derek. I like the Oklahoma pitching staff better than the Arkansas pitching staff, which is kind of strange to say.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that the Arkansas pitching staff ain't going to come in this weekend and look like the 95 Braves or something like that. They could. It's baseball. We'll see. But I do like the Oklahoma staff as much as I've liked many of them that we've seen. And that brings me to Ethan Petrie. We talked to Will Crow about this yesterday and got Will's version of it from the pitching side. It's strange to say things like this, and you've been around Ethan for 3 years. And I Coach Lake references the SEC often as a testosterone league. You are going to get challenged. It's not going to be like the other night. Like Chad Holbrook was not going to let that kid on the mound get beat by Ethan Petrie. They were going to break and ball him to death, and if you walk him, you walk him. That ain't going to be the case in Fayetteville this weekend. They will throw to him, just like Oklahoma did last weekend. Watching Ethan on Tuesday night, I could just see through the television and listening to y'all. He was coming out of his skis trying to hit balls to the moon. It was like, my God, somebody give me a 94 or 5 mile an hour fastball so I can hit it a country mile here. He's going to see that this weekend. I think he gets better with SEC play. I liked him last weekend, and I like him again this weekend, Derek.
Well, yes, but I mean, I don't question he's better. I just think that I'm not as sold on how challenging, how much teams are going to challenge him in conference play, because he is still by far the centerpiece of this lineup. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what level you coach on. You are not – there's a mentality of we're not going to let one guy beat us. And so I'm not sold on that position yet. I'm more curious to see at Arkansas how they do pitch to him. Will he get more fastballs to swing at? There were parts of the Oklahoma series where he did, but then there were also moments where they made it clear they weren't going to allow him to be the difference maker in this game. So yeah, that's a real curiosity to me. I have been so impressed with him this season in his willingness to deal with that circumstance. He's not at any point that I've noticed tried to do too much. Yeah. And you see it every year for a variety of reasons. Either it is what the circumstance he's in, as to what I'm alluding to, which is he is, he's the clear-cut guy, and there's not a hitter behind him that you feel like, well, we don't want to mess with that guy, so we're probably going to work around him. There's that scenario, which could cause him to expand his strike zone and get impatient, chase some bad balls. Hasn't done it. There's also the whole it's your draft year scenario. We've watched guys put so much pressure on themselves in not our program, but every program around the country. There's a story every year about a guy who you look up midway through the junior year and you go, what is wrong with him? And the people that are around him closely will say, it's a draft year, man. He's trying, he's pressuring himself. He's getting out of his routine. I haven't seen any indication of either of those scenarios impacting Ethan. And that's been really, really encouraging. It's a sign of maturity. He's a great leader for this team. And then as Coach Beneri says, he wants to win. He wants his team to win as much as anybody I've ever coached. And at times it's almost like I want him to be a little more selfish. Coach Beneri, if you haven't figured it out yet, he considers walk as dirty of a 4-letter word as anything else you can come up with. He don't want his guys taking walks. He wants aggressive hackers up there. He feels like if you're taking pitches, it costs you your aggressiveness. And so he's not a big fan of that. So he, when we see Ethan taking some free passes that are clearly the opponent not wanting to pitch to him without actually saying, just go take your base, the intentional walk. Ethan has really managed those circumstances well. And I've just been really impressed by it. And to your point, I'm really curious when we get to Fayetteville to see what their approach is, how they pitch him, because Dave Van Horn is one of the best all time, I think. Yep. I really do. Yeah. He will not he'll not make those kinds of coaching mistakes that help you out too much. So if we see whatever DVH's approach is, it's probably something a lot of other people will mimic as the season goes along with how they approach Ethan Petrie and how they pitch him.
Well, certainly everybody this year has been, that shift is on. I think sometimes people look at that and they think about it a little bit differently than the purpose of it. They're all very willing to give up a single to right field through the 4-hole.
Yep.
What they don't want to give up is the home run or the ball in the left center field gap or whatever it is. But he's been taking that. All right, you're going to give it to me, I'll take it. And I think it's been quite impressive. Jordan Carrion's been impressive offensively. I know he'd like to have the 9th inning back last week, but that's over and he can't get it back. But he's been a nice spark to this team at the bottom of the lineup too, Derek.
Oh, I love what I've seen from him. First of all, yes, you're right. That one play sticks with you, but he has been, other than that, he's been nothing short of excellent defensively. And he's got that unique approach offensively. He's going to go up there, and you talk about a guy who's not there to walk. He's there to swing at the first pitch if it's in the zone. He has a very obvious first pitch fastball, I'm ready to hack approach. He's had a lot of success with that. He's got that, Stewart calls it that buggy whip swing. And for a guy where he's batting in the order, I like what I've seen a lot from him so far. And plus, it's not someone who you went into this season talking about much. Second base, most folks were thinking Nolan Naraki. At one point, they were talking about a few different guys that might be in that spot. That's not a name that you heard much about, and he has clearly earned it. You've had some guys step forward from lesser roles, play hard, do things the right way, and they're getting rewarded with playing time. He is primarily the guy I look at, but Evan Stone's another one.
Evan Stone.
Love what I've seen from Stoney so far this year, and I'm really rooting for him to get more at bats because, again, you don't know until you give him a chance. Put him in the lineup, leave him in the lineup for a couple of days against SEC pitching. Let's see if he has matured enough and grown up and experienced it enough over these past few years that he's ready to take a step forward.
If he can lay off that breaking ball sometimes, Evan Stone could be dangerous. There's no question. And nobody likes to put that uniform on more than he does. So exactly. I've been very happy about that. We'll see if maybe one of those guys squeezes up in the lineup too, because as much as Hall gets on base, having somebody in the 2-hole, maybe that you can do some things with once he's on, certainly would be advantageous for Ethan and Kennedy, Scobie, right. Whoever. So we'll kind of see. Derek, I know we got to let you run. Y'all leave. I'm assuming you're on the team plane today.
Yes.
Okay.
They're not making me drive. No. They did not tell me to get the equipment van yesterday. We'll see you when you get there. Thankfully.
You're not dumping Alex Jones on a drive back from Fayetteville by himself this time, right? Okay, that's good.
Fayetteville's a different challenge than Gainesville, that's for sure.
That's a little bit different. Thank you, man. It's 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock airtime. 7 o'clock
airtime.
7:15. Yeah, I've got basketball. I got it all screwed up. 7:15 airtime.
I think I told everybody last night to remember next week's Carolina Calls is on Thursday, not Wednesday. And I was real proud of myself. And then afterwards, I was told, you said the show starts at 7 p.m. next Thursday. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Okay, well, I got it. I'm batting 500, right? I got it the right day. I got the wrong time. So that's about where I am right now.
That's got the 6:30 midweek start times have got me screwed up. But you and Coach Lake keep doing what you're doing. Sometimes I forget I'm listening to a baseball game. I'll be sitting. I think last week y'all were talking about movie shows. I think I texted you about something.
You did. You got me on the straight and narrow there too. So.
Yeah, I just you get lost in the broadcast. That means you're doing something right. Thank you, Derek. Safe travels to Fayetteville. Bring back a win for us if you don't mind.
Sounds good, guys. Take care, JB.
See you, man. Yeah, man. You're the man. There you go, Derek Scott.